Welcome, everyone, for the Business for Responsible Tax Reform, or better known as BRTR, COVID-19. We're here to talk about the CARES Act and what it means for small businesses. I want to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. Please, everyone will be on mute at this time, and we will have question and answers, Q&A at the end. And you use the chat feature to ask any questions, and we will have a facilitator who will ask those questions of our panelists. I want to welcome our BRTR co-chairs, Frank Knapp Jr., who is also the CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce, and Zimmerman, who is the owner of Zimmerman and Company, CPAs with offices in Cincinnati and Cleveland. And I am Shondell Newsom, visionary and founder of Some New Marketing in Las Vegas. And later, we will have a special guest. We'll be hearing from Rebecca Melanson, Executive Director of the Austin Independent Business Alliance. So now let me give you a brief description of BRTR. BRTR was formed in 2017 to call for policy reform that truly benefits our American small business owners. This is extremely important, as prior small businesses were never really had a strong voice throughout the country. So this is extremely important for those of you on the phone to understand that this is a great resource for you as small business owners. It's a coalition of business leaders dedicated to ensuring policies are enacted that help Main Street entrepreneurs create jobs, revitalize communities, and grow the economy. At this time, I'm going to hand off to Frank, and he will go over polling and the current state of affairs.
Thank you, Shondell, and welcome to all who are on this teletown hall. I am Frank Knapp, President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce. I think we all need to keep in mind that you are not alone. We are all in this together. I know you've heard that before. And good demonstration of that is that the Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform, we did a survey of small businesses in our network, and we had 1,800 respondents, a tremendous response. And we found that 92% of small businesses have been impacted by COVID-19. 73% of respondents have lost 50% or more of the revenue. 26% have lost all of the revenue. And 45% of businesses in shelter-in-place areas have closed. And as we know, shelter-in-place ordinances are going on and adding every day. So in this survey, we specifically asked small businesses, what specific business concerns do you have in relation to the pandemic? And if you could advance the slide for me, thank you. So here were the results. 66% said that they were having concerns about paying employees. 85% said they had cash flow challenges. 68% were concerned about paying overhead. 50% were concerned about closing. And 72% were very concerned about lack of customers. And then 61%, their inability to pay the debt. Small businesses are clearly in a crisis. The public knows it, and they are very sympathetic. In fact, a recent Washington Post ABC News poll found that 90% of Americans support providing billions in financial assistance to small businesses. Now, throughout this whole crisis, the Businesses for Responsible Tax Reform has been fighting hard to ensure that small businesses get immediate and sufficient financial relief. We've been doing that through direct outreach to policymakers in Washington. We've been doing it through the media with talking to reporters and through opinion editorials. We've been doing it through letters directly to Congress, telling them what the results were of our poll and what small businesses needed, and that was direct cash to them to survive. And we have, of course, educational sessions like the one you are involved in right now. We're going to turn this over now to Ann. I think it's your turn. Ann, you want to take it over?
Sure, Frank. Thank you. I'm Ann Zimmerman. I'm a CPA, and I'm in the midst, excuse me, of craziness that's going on here, which I'm sure you all are also. The CARES Act was signed into law recently, and it has many, many parts. It's about $350 billion that's available for small businesses. And it comes in multiple parts, but the part you're probably thinking of right now is the PPP, or Payroll Protection Program. They're also called PPLs, Payroll Protection Loans. So all of the lenders that are already approved by SBA for doing 7A loans, which are what you generally think of as small business loans, are going to be starting these for small businesses on Friday. They're going to start this. And they're going to be willing to loan you up to 2.5 times 1 month's payroll. The payroll that you're looking at is the last 12 months, and it gets to include wages, bonuses, sick pay, PTO, health benefits. Interesting, it's called healthcare benefits, including health insurance premiums. So it's not just health insurance premiums. For instance, if you have an HRA, it appears that that can be included. Vacation, the employer's cost of retirement. So all those things are defined as payroll. They have to be employees. They can't be independent contractors to you. They have to be your employee, W-2 employees. So you figure that payroll, 2.5 times that is what you're going to be able to be loaned starting Friday. We'll get into some of those details in a bit. The loans can then be used to keep yourself in business, but as the name says, Payroll Protection Program, the purpose of the loan is to keep people on payroll. That's what the government wants you to do. So they're making that, they're incentivizing you to keep people on payroll, because you can use it for payroll, you can use it for rent and utilities, you can use it for existing debt that you have to pay interest on that. You can pay interest on your mortgage. You're not going to get to count the principal when we get to the next thing. But if you can go to the next slide, let's start with who gets to take these loans. I apologize if it's confusing. I'm going to try to make sense of it as I go through about 5 slides. So first, who gets to take them? Companies with less than 500 employees, although if you're in the hotel and food business and you're a franchisee or have different locations, there's some exceptions for you. Independent contractors and sole proprietors can take them even if they don't have employees, but we got word just 2 hours ago from the SBA that they're holding off the application for loans for those people, independent contractors, sole proprietors, for an extra week, which is very interesting. We'll talk about it later. 501c3 nonprofits and also 501c19s, which are veterans organizations. They're not asking about your credit worthiness. They're not asking for any collateral. They're not asking for any guarantees. I know this slide says it's designed to cover your expenses till June, but really what they're looking at and what you're going to have to prove is what you spend on it the 8 weeks after you take the loan. So also you can only receive one SBA loan, but if you take an emergency injury disaster loan, which I will also talk about, different than the PPP, that one can be rolled into a PPP. So you can't have 2 applications out at one time, but you can get that one first and then the PPP. So next slide, if you would be so kind. The beauty of this PPL loan is that you can get most or all of it forgiven if you qualify in certain ways. I think we're waiting for the next slide, Colin. Thank you. So you're going to be able, that's where the 8 weeks after the loan date comes in. Loans are going to be forgiven up to the amount that you spend on payroll, utilities, rent, mortgage interest, not principal, for the 8 weeks after you take the loan. But then they're also going to look at how well you protected your payroll. And they're going to start reducing, they call it a reduction in the forgiveness. So if you get, and this gets beyond the scope of this webinar, but basically if you keep all your employees paid, whether they're working or not, you're going to get it all forgiven if you spend it in that 8 weeks. If you, in very simplistic terms, if you lay off half of your employees, you're going to get a 50% reduction in that forgiveness. And it's measured in both full-time equivalents that you have prior to and at the end of the loan, and it's measured in wages by individual employees. What we're finding so far is you can't replace people. It has to be the same employee. The part that you're going to end up having to send employment payroll returns to prove that you kept them is what they're saying. It's going to be a mess. The portion of the loan that is not forgiven, and we just learned this 2 hours ago, is going to be due in 2 years, not 10 as the media had been saying. The law let them go up to 10, but the SBA set it at 2 years today at 0.5%, which is much less than Congress allowed them to. So let's go to the next one. You can't include in payroll any employee compensation over $100,000 on an annualized basis. And we actually have a question into the Senate Finance Committee and the SBA for clarification on how they're going to annualize, because there is a piece in the law that makes that confusing. It does not include withholding taxes. Basically 21, 22, and 24 sections are withholding taxes. It does not include any employees outside the US, and it doesn't include any pay or family emergency medical leave act, which is the Family's First Corona Response Act. Those you get back under a different program. So that doesn't come under the PPP. All right, so we talked about the loan terms, I think, already. If they're not forgiven, let's see. Our next one, let's move on to the loan terms. The other thing I didn't mention is you don't have to pay it back for at least 6 months and up to 12 months. And that'll be, I think, up to the banks. They're talking about it. And they're saying most of them are going to do 12 months. There are no fees of any kind now or in the future for these loans, which is different than most 7A SBA loans. There's no guarantees required of any kind. There's other things in this law. The employee retention credit, most people are not going to use that, but it's available. You can't use it and then get a payroll protection loan. You also cannot delay the payment of your employer taxes, payroll taxes, which now they started by saying that was going to be just the employer share, the 6.2% of Social Security. But the regs that came out allow you to hold your entire 941 payment to pay for to pre-fund these credits. But remember, if you do that, you cannot participate in the Paycheck Protection Program. So you're not going to get this forgiven loan. The one other thing I do want to talk about before we get to the last slide on paid sick leave is the emergency injury disaster loan. You get that loan on the SBA site. You don't go to the participating banks. There is a link. I tested it today. It's actually working. It's about 4 or 5 screens that you have to fill out, information about you, information about any owner that owns more than 20%. There is a section that you can do if you're real estate, if you have real estate losses, if you get your income from rents, and that sort of thing. And the government said they were going to give you $10,000 advance on that loan within 3 days of applying. That is not happening, just so you know. I've got clients that have done it more than 3 days ago. They don't have any money. I had a client call today to see why he didn't have it. He was 285th in line on the phone queue. So the site had crashed, but it is back up. It does not ask you how much you want to borrow. So don't think you're crazy when you try to do the application and you don't see that. They take the application. They're supposed to send you the $10,000 because that's free money. You're never going to pay that back if you use it for payroll. And then they call you and find out how much you want to borrow. So it's sort of a crazy system, but it is a possibility. And for any employers that think they are not going to return their staff by June 30th, or there's a good chance they're going to have still a big reduction, getting that $10,000 free is not a bad idea. Later, you can try to roll it into a PPL, a payroll protection loan, that EIDL. So, but the $10,000 remains free. It doesn't also get forgiven on the other side, but it remains free. And finally, paid sick and medical leave obligations. Okay, these came out in the earlier law, not the CARES Act actually, and they're more of a requirement rather than good stuff, but they require employers with less than 500 people. They basically take the FMLA and make it apply in certain ways and even broader ways to smaller than 500 employees. So it's putting new requirements on us. It has a piece in it that says if you're less than 50 employees, you can apply for exemption from this law, but they don't have to give it to you, just so you know. And it applies starting tomorrow. So anybody that you lay off, well, it's 2 pieces. It's sick and it's family leave. I'm not going to go in detail here, but one of them you have to pay 2 weeks, the other one you have to pay 12 weeks, but you don't have to pay the first 2 weeks, so they can coordinate. And whatever you pay under these laws, the government gives you back. And that's where you get into getting it back from the deferral of your payroll taxes if you want. So in just a few minutes, that's an awful lot of information. I can say that my staff has probably got 50, 60 hours in studying the law in the last 3 days, and we're still answering questions and trying to figure things out. So take it slow and take it in bites, and hopefully you will start to understand it. I'd like to finish with a few concrete steps you can get ready to start applying. They're going to need your payroll records by month for all of 2019 and year-to-date 2020. So you're going to pull that. They're going to want your P&Ls and balance sheet if you have one for all of 2019 and all of 2020. And that's pretty much what I'm hearing. The application for the PPL came out today, sent to the banks by the SBA. If we're able, we'll post that somewhere with the slides for this, but that's up to the IT people behind this. And I'm hearing from banks that they're only going to deal with their existing customers. So you should start with your own bank. And that a number of them are already starting basically a queue of who wants them as early as today. So you might want to talk to your banker sooner rather than later. I think that's it in a nutshell. I know we only have an hour today and we want to allow some time for questions. So I'm going to hand it back to Frank and let's hear what's going on in the field, Frank.
Well, thank you, Ann. I appreciate it. Thank you for that review. It's obviously very clear that this is not going to be very easy for the average small business owner to understand. And they're going to need some professional guidance here. So let's hope that everybody out there has a CPA like Ann who can guide them through this entire process to make sure they do the right thing. And I would be very concerned of not taking out a loan and thinking it's going to be 100% forgivable and then don't do it right and end up with debt. Which I think most small businesses don't really want to take on debt in this situation. Let's move on to what's going on out there across the country. We are very, very happy to have with us Rebecca Melanson. She's the Executive Director of the Austin Independent Business Alliance. Rebecca, what is happening in Austin and out in Texas?
Well, we are in a shelter-in-place situation here. So local business, on the one hand, is hurting like they are everywhere in the country. All the concerns that you voiced in the beginning of this are definitely in full flow here in Austin and in Texas. Most of the large cities in Texas are in a shelter-in-place edict. So there is good news, I will say, and one of the things that I'm blown away by actually is the inventiveness of entrepreneurs and finding ways to service customers beyond anything they thought they would ever be doing. And some of that is actually working quite well.
Very good. Well, we appreciate it. And very close to you is Nevada. Or is that Nevada, Shondell? Shondell Newsom is the with the Urban Chamber of Commerce in Las Vegas. Should I say Nevada or Nevada, Shondell?
Nevada. I've learned that. I've been here for 33 years, Frank. You got to call it Nevada.
Tell us what's going on in Nevada.
This is similar. It's similar to what Rebecca's talking about. Our governor, Sisolak, asked us to close all non-essential businesses. And I am also very, very amazed at how our small businesses becoming creative and still providing the services to their customers and to their clients. What's the challenge is all of the unknown, right? And a lot of the uncertainty of when things are going to get back to normal, if it ever gets back to normal. And then all of the questions like, Ann is probably going to have to do a road tour. She's probably going to be on a big stage in Vegas telling everybody about how to get through all of this, because that's where I get a lot of questions is, it's very confusing to a lot of small business owners, what's forgiven, what's not forgiven, what's really, some people are still thinking it's a bailout. So we just have to, I think right now we're having great conversations over and giving them good information on, what's real and what's not.
Well, very good. Thank you, Shondell. And let me just tell you briefly about South Carolina. We are a much more rural state than either of the Texas or Nevada. Or is that Nevada? I keep on messing that up, Shondell. You're going to have to straighten me out somehow.
Nevada.
Got it. So we do not have a shelter in place statewide. We have two cities, two of our largest cities, Columbia and Charleston, that do have a shelter in place or stay at home. We do now, as of this afternoon, have a statewide ordinance that will basically say only essential businesses will be open. The governor felt that that would be sufficient to impact the spread of the virus. He is reluctant to do something that some of the other states, a number of the other states have done about a complete statewide shelter in place. So, but we are struggling like everybody else, and our businesses are trying to figure out a way of staying in business to the best of their ability. And I said something earlier about the public really having sympathy for small businesses. I'll just give you a quick example from my own experience. My family has a small dog kennel. And I went in there just yesterday and we did have somebody come in to pick up some dogs, and the gentleman didn't know that I was a part owner of the business, and he said he felt so sorry for the workers there, of what this was doing to the business, and that's what I think all of the public across this country have that same feeling, that they really feel very badly for their small businesses because they know how important the small businesses are, and they have relationships with those small businesses. So it is important that let's go to the next slide if we could, that Congress is hearing this, and they're already debating a fourth stimulus package. And they really need to hear from you, the small business owner, about what needs to be in that. And probably, as you have heard, that the money that was already put in the last stimulus package, the $350 billion to be loaned out to small businesses, will probably go pretty quickly. And the one thing that Congress does not want to do is to tell small businesses that they are going to provide them with a loan that could be 100% forgivable and then not deliver. And so I think that one thing we need to ask them to do is continue to put money into the program, the SBA program, to be loaning money to small businesses for their own survival. This is about long-term rebuilding of our economy. And we've got to put small business owners first, because we all know, and the economists will tell you, that most net new jobs come from small businesses across this country, especially ones that are less than 5 years old and have less than 5 employees. That is really where we get growth in our economy. And there's not been a better time for small businesses to rebuild America's future. But first, we need to have the federal government make sure that most small businesses survive this crisis. So now it's time to take some questions from you all. And we already have some that have been submitted. So let me go over some of the questions that we already have. And you better be ready, because you're going to get some of these, as you can imagine. So Claire asks, can you clarify the size standard of under 500 employees? Is this just for the specific bill, law, or are they using the SBA? Are they using the SBA size standards for different industries? Ann, can you address that real quick?
I can. There are some differences than the 500. Like you said, for the industries, the SBA has that on their website. And as Claire knows, thank you for the question, some businesses are seen to be small at a different number than under 500. And that is still true for this law as well, yes.
So, and for, if you want to ask a question, do go to the chat feature and type your question in to the question box, and we will take as many of these as we can. Robert asks, we are a manufacturing company. Is it better to lay off workers and let them collect unemployment, or should I get the new SBA loan and continue paying payroll using that loan? And what would your advice be?
Thanks, Robert. That's a good question, and that's the question that everybody is asking today. You hit the nail on the head. Congress is obviously wanting you to keep paying them and not lay them off. So they wrote this law with the hopes that you would keep paying them and not lay them off. That the time periods are wonky, because if you took the loan tomorrow or Friday when it comes out, then your 8 weeks are up before the end of May, and that's what they're going to measure you on to see if it's forgiven. But yet you have till June 30 to see if you dropped employees, and they're saying they're trying to get you to June 30. So it's almost like you have to measure, you have to see how much of this is going to be forgiven. in your particular situation. If you can keep them on, the government wants you to, and they want you to pay them and not the stimulus, not letting unemployment do it, rather. One of the things that we don't have clarified yet is, what if I lay my employees off because I don't have any money yet and I can't pay them, and then I get this loan, and then I bring them back by June 30, okay, and they've been on unemployment, but do I have to, but there's some thought that you have to pay them back wages when you bring them back, and I don't know the absolute answer to that yet. We're waiting for guidance. The SBA is supposed to give us guidance any day on those kinds of things. So my best answer is ask your accountant and ask him or her to run a projection of how much of the loan you could get and how much of the loan would be forgiven, and kind of go from there.
Thank you, Ann. And if I might do a follow-up on that, because I've been thinking about this. If a small business gets one of these PPP loans in the next week, and that's for 8 weeks, that they bring back everybody, they make the same payroll, they do everything appropriately to try to get the 100% forgivable. At the end of the 8 weeks, it's still sometime before June 30th. What if they lay them off again prior to June 30th? What happens to that forgivable nature of the loan?
There are actually some provisions that you can't do that. So you need to check into that also. There's a number of provisions. You can't pay dividends, and whether that not paying dividends includes distributions to S corporations or distributions to partners is unknown. You can't then right away lay everybody off either. You have to keep some other things after that. So that is kind of beyond the scope of this, and I don't know an absolute answer, so I can't give you an absolute answer.
Well, it's important. So when people are deciding how to move forward, timing might be important too.
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ann. Tom asks, on a Georgia Chamber webinar today, there was a statement made that if you bring employees back, sounds familiar, after being furloughed, that they would qualify for forgiveness of those monies paid to them. Is this true, and does it matter if we are paying them to do nothing, or if they are getting paid to perform the functions of which they were previously hired? Good question, Tom.
Okay, I can answer parts of that. It doesn't matter if they're doing nothing, you can still pay them. That's for sure. What was the other part of it? Whether or not they're who's forgiving what? I'm not sure.
Well, I think that we've addressed the rest of it about how it could be forgiven depending on a number of different factors. But I think Tom raises a good question about, is it worth getting this loan, because some of that money will be able to use for utilities and rent, and even if you have to pay people who are sitting at home because you don't have anything for them to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
it is a worthy question, and I think there'll be a lot of us pondering that, Tom. Thank you. Karen asked, does the PPP loans only cover salaries up to $100,000?
Okay, good question. Yes, it only covers up to the first 100,000 paid annually. And when you go to figure your reduction amount for forgiveness, if any, and remember I said you have to count your FTEs and do some calculating there, and you also have to calculate wages by person. So you're actually going to calculate if the wages you paid by person have gone down more than 25%. So if you have a new person or a replacement person, we don't think that's going to help you on that. It's going to have to be the existing ones. And the people who earned more than $100,000 don't even get counted in that calculation. They're not defined as an employee in the law for that purpose. So they're ignored completely for that purpose of the law. There's a lot of that in there where it counts for one part of the law and not the other. Does that make sense to you, Frank? Did I answer the question?
Yeah, and thank you very much. And I know it's difficult because I'm just reading these questions and you're doing it on the fly, so I thank you.
I am.
Yes, you are. But you're preparing to get on that big stage in Las Vegas, aren't you?
Yeah, with feathers on my head, I think, or something. Isn't that what they do in Las Vegas?
Lloyd asked if one of my folks that I laid off does not want to return, and I hire a replacement, does the payroll on the new hire count toward the payroll forgiveness?
Okay, great question. I asked that question. BRTR sent that question on to the Senate Finance Committee today to get clarification. The way the law reads, by the letter of the law, I do not think so. That'll hurt you. It has to be that employee. But we're hoping they will interpret it more liberally.
Well, let me ask you.
By the way, I think the reasoning for that is because I could lay my employees off and then I could hire family or things like that to try to make it up. And so they're trying to avoid that abuse. That's my personal gut feeling of why that part of is law. And there's another question here I got from someone else. Does life insurance count as health care? I believe the answer to that from our reading, and I have to give that caveat that it's our reading. I've been on webinars for days and reading the law for days, and I've heard all sorts of contradicting facts. But group health policies that include life insurance do count as payroll costs. Individual life policies for owners and key employees do not.
Thank you, Ann. Rebecca, we have a question for you. And the same question will go to Shondell. What can local groups like yours, Rebecca, in Austin, and Shondell, yours in Las Vegas, do to work with the cities and states around the COVID to help local businesses?
I think the best thing that any group can do is to be the voice of those local businesses and to give cities feedback and instruction on what's happening. The biggest problem we have is that our city has jumped into action very quickly to do $35,000 grants to businesses immediately. But these aren't so immediate. You know, they're going to take several weeks to get, and a lot of businesses are looking at tomorrow or today with their leases and their payrolls and saying, but I can't make these right now. That kind of feedback is absolutely crucial. And sometimes it surprises me in government how few people really understand what being a local business owner is like. That a lot of small businesses have 2 to 4 weeks of padding, if that. And when the door slams shut, all that stops. So keeping that at the forefront.
You know, Frank, if I could jump in there too. We have clients in that situation, of course, a hair salon, for instance, that didn't have the money to pay his final payroll because he counts on his week's income to pay the payroll 2 weeks later, you know. If I could say that the fastest money today is probably that emergency injury disaster loan right from the SBA. You know, I don't know how fast the banks are going to work. We'll know more about that next week. Maybe we need to have another webinar and I can tell you.
Shondell, what is going on? Is your group able to work with your local cities and the state of trying to help small businesses?
Yes, you know, and here's what I told the president of our chamber. I said, this is actually when we earn our money. This is when we earn our reputation. This is when the chamber steps to the forefront of all of these issues. And it's just extremely important that we coordinate with the other chambers and the other organizations so that we're all on the same page. and definitely connecting with our city officials, our state reps, our U.S. reps, and our governor. And make, one of the things that we're very, very proud of is that we did speak out on behalf of our independent contractors. We also spoke out on behalf of our small restaurants who, wanted to do curbside and wanted to do delivery so that they don't have to completely shut down. So I think it's real important that at this point in time that you become that voice. If you're a small chamber, you become that true voice for the small business owners and their establishments.
Thank you, Shondell. And I'm going to finish with this question from Wanda. Are there opportunities to get more information and stay in touch? Shondell, we'll turn it over to you.
Are there more opportunities to stay in touch with? Are you talking about from the perspective?
More information from the Business Responsible Tax Reform.
Oh, yeah. So if we're going into we do have information right now. We do want people to, first of all, let me thank you all for really paying attention to what we're doing and really take the survey. Make your voice be heard, because at one point in time, I've been in business for 14 years. These opportunities did not exist to get online, talk to some folks from around the country, and be a voice, right? Be a strong voice. When I traveled to DC, over a decade ago, we tried very hard, but we didn't have this coalition really well oiled like it is today. So, real work with BRTR, and we can help you tell your stories to the media and the policy workers, and we can help you with some swift action. So, go to email us at info@businesstaxfortaxreform.com. And we can help you get your stories out and help you to speak to the policymakers. Most of us on this call have great relationships with these policymakers, and most of us can make a phone call if it's necessary. So we do want you to really, really work with us, work closely with us, and see how we can be a powerful voice as one. And I do want to thank everyone for being on this call. And we will share a copy of this PowerPoint. And we have some links and resources that can help you during this time. You'll see the small business owner's guide to the CARES Act, the SBA lender match tool, SBA disaster loan online application, the COVID-19 employee resource guide. That one is a great one. I've read through that. That gives you some wonderful information. And the National Association of Self-Employed resource page. Like I said, self-employed people were really asking a lot of questions. So these can be some wonderful resources. And I want you to stay in tune with us and stay connected with us, because we will be creating a Facebook group to discuss small business issues during the pandemic and beyond. Once it's up and running, we will share the information on how you can join. So I'm going to give you give everyone contact info, and again, go to info@businessfortaxreform.org. And please stay safe and stay healthy. We appreciate our small businesses. On behalf of my co-chairs and everyone with BRTR, we are thankful for you, and thank you for being strong as small business owners. Thank you again, and have a blessed day.